It is, I don't know, I think it's around 8 o'clock, and this is Dave out here again, walking for PTSD, and I'm in Waverly, Ohio still. It is October 16th, and I'm at post 142. It is simply amazing some of the people I run into. I'm going to make this really short and sweet so we can get right down to the meat of what's going on here. Met a gentleman tonight by the name of Craig Dixon, and really nice guy. Willing to share with me a few things, and when he did, I was beside myself, and I just could not let this story die with me. So I'm going to introduce you right now to Craig Dixon, and might tell you a little bit about himself and tell you his story. Anyway, here we go. Let's talk to Craig.
Well, I was talking about my father, who was a World War II Army Air Corps veteran. Dad was born in 1919, and he enlisted in the service right after Pearl Harbor in 1941. He took his basic training in Texas and stayed in the United States for a couple of years. But as things progressed, he was dispatched to Italy with the Army Air Corps bomb group, and they lived in Italy the last 2 years, 1944 and 1945. In an olive field in tents. It was very primitive, very rough. And he talked about the many planes that would come in crippled and shot up, and the rough landings, and if they had their landing lights on, he said, I've lost a buddy, or the plane has been damaged severely. So at night, his job, they would go behind lines. They knew where most of our downed bombers were. And they would steal parts, rob parts off of the down crashed planes, bring them back to the base to try to keep our planes in the air. And we were losing so many at that time that it was a real struggle and a really important work. So it all culminated in 1945 when Benito Mussolini was captured and strung up in the streets and was killed, along with his mistress. And Dad talked about they went up into his villa in the mountains and they swam in his pool. He had pilfered Rome. He had artifacts and marble statues. They drank his wine and then they came down into Rome. And they were hanging in the street. This was the final end for Italy. And my dad had a good buddy that was in the news service. Dad saw all this, but he couldn't get close. He wasn't allowed up close, but one of his buddies in the news corps took some pictures. They cut down Mussolini and his mistress, put them in pine boxes, and he was able to get pictures from his buddy, the original pictures, that day in 1945. You want to see these? They're a little graphic.
This is graphic. If there are any children, you need to tell them to go play with a toy, go outside or something. So here we go.
This was Benito Mussolini after they cut him down. They were machine gunned. He made a terrible mistake when he sided with Hitler, and this was the result. And this was done by his own people in the streets of Rome. And as you can see, his head was mush. He was completely shot up with machine gun fire. And this was his mistress who was with him when he was hiding out, and she was found, and she was also put up in the street and shot.
So your dad held on to this, Marion, right?
Marion
Dixon.
All these years.
All these years.
All these years. And these were the original prints. And I think for him, this made it all worthwhile. We got it.
Right. How did he?
It was 4 rough years. And a lot of pain. He didn't talk about it for years. Would very seldom talk about the war.
And he was how old when World War II was over?
1945, he would have been, let's see, born in 19.
26. So a young man at 26.
Oh, yeah.
That's younger than my son. He's 8 years old, or 28 years old. And so from 26 years old until he died, and he died just a few years ago.
Just a few years ago, he was 90, just a few months short of being 90 years old.
What was the after effect of going through that, and through the peacetime and being a civilian, coming back home to family?
He was so glad to be back, and he was the most positive person you'd ever want to meet. After being through all this and living through it. So many didn't. And he was always upbeat, but he never would want to talk about the war. And I think the hardest time I ever saw, it was in his last couple years, he was in his 80s. My daughter bought him a book, a hardbound book on the planes of World War II, the old airplanes and the bombers, which we thought he would enjoy, but it was a mistake. It brought it all back.
Oh, it did.
And he sat there and the tears rolled. And then he started telling me about what each plane was. And he was showing the turrets underneath, which were usually hit. Of course, your machine gun people were down in there.
And he was emotional.
And he said, I had to help pull them out when the planes landed. And he said, these were your buddies you lived with every day and they fought with.
Was he emotional when he was talking about
Very emotional, yeah.
How was it for
And
his
really,
son?
we felt kind of guilty afterwards. We kind of thought, well, we thought he would enjoy it, but it brought it all back. All this he never talked about, and it all started coming out just the last couple of years of his life.
How was that for you when here you are, you're talking to your dad,
Yeah.
you've known him, he's 96 years old, and you're a young man with a lot of gray hair there. I was just curious,
Yeah.
at your age, talking to your dad and listening to the way he is speaking about World War II, how did it make you feel as far as thinking about your dad and what he went through?
Yeah.
I would have guessed it would have been hard. It would have been hard for me.
It was hard.
To see his face.
Yeah, he was always upbeat and a lot of fun. Serious, you didn't want to push him.
Right.
But I mean, he was real laid back. And you never saw him upset. You never saw him show a lot of emotion. And when he opened that book and started looking at the planes, it was, oh dear, it was bad. Yeah.
Wow. Well, Craig, let me say this much. I'm incredibly honored to be sitting here and just talking to you. And I thank you for your father's service. I would love to have a chance to meet you.
You liked him. Yeah.
But
and he used to go to the reunions every year, their bomb group.
oh, really?
He did up until the time he was about 86. And there's only one left in Tennessee. They always kept in touch, and he still calls my mother.
Really?
So they were a tight bunch, the ones that made it through together.
Yeah. I found that in my own service, that we were, 30 years and we still communicate with each other, and haven't seen them.
You experience something
But,
like
you know,
that.
you
There's
talk to 'em every
there's a
year.
bond there that'll be there forever.
That's right. That's right. Well, again, I am honored to be sitting here with you and knowing what your father did for our country, to maintain our freedoms that we can enjoy today.
Yeah.
So I thank you from the bottom of my heart. And
You're
thanks
welcome.
for taking this few minutes to talk to me.
You're welcome. His story needed to be told.
Absolutely, absolutely. Anyway, that was just a few minutes with Craig Dixon here in Waverly, Ohio. Thank you so much for joining in with me, and keep following me, keep commenting. It's really special for me to read your comments, and it really makes me feel when I'm out there on the road that I'm not alone. You guys are with me. But thank you very much, and you have a wonderful evening.